You are standing in your bedroom, performing a ritual so routine you don't even think about it. You fluff the pillow to just the right height. You pull the duvet up to your chin. You reach over and click the lamp off, plunging the room into a familiar, comforting darkness. Finally, you check the lock on the door one last time, satisfied that you are completely, safely alone. You think this solitude is the ultimate luxury of a modern, civilized life. But as you close your eyes and wait for sleep to take you, every single cell in your body is screaming that you have just made a fatal mistake. Your brain doesn't see a secure apartment. It sees a defenseless animal lying in the open, far from the pack, waiting to be eaten. Why would your own biology treat your bedroom like a graveyard? This leads to a fundamental misunderstanding about what human rest actually is. We've been taught to believe that the ideal sleep environment is a silent, isolated, pitch-black room where we can remain undisturbed for 8 consecutive hours. We call it getting a good night's rest. But if you look at the broad arc of human history, this version of sleep isn't just a recent invention, it's a biological anomaly. For over 99% of our time on this planet, sleeping alone was considered an act of insanity. It was a behavior reserved for the social outcast, the dying, or the incredibly unlucky. To our ancestors, the sound of total silence wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of a guard who had fallen asleep on the job. But if we weren't meant to sleep in silence, how did we ever manage to actually close our eyes? The answer lies in something called the sentinel hypothesis, and it's the first major myth we have to dismantle. We often imagine ancient humans huddling together in a cave, everyone falling asleep at the same time and waking up when the sun rises. We assume they just toughed it out through the danger. But a landmark 2017 study led by David Sampson at the University of Toronto proved that our ancestors didn't just sleep together, they slept in a way that ensured the group never truly slept at all. Dr. Sampson and his team spent weeks tracking the sleep patterns of the Hadza people in Tanzania, a group whose lifestyle provides a window into our deep evolutionary past. They didn't find a group of people sleeping in an 8-hour block. Instead, they found a chaotic, overlapping mess of wakefulness. Out of more than 200 total hours of sleep monitored across the group, the researchers found that there were only 18 measly minutes where every single adult was asleep at the same time. For the other 99% of the night, at least one person was awake, alert, and capable of hearing a twig snap in the darkness. But if someone is always awake, doesn't that mean the group as a whole is perpetually exhausted? Actually, it's the exact opposite. This asynchronous sleep is a brilliant survival mechanism that allowed ancient humans to get deep, restorative rest without ever being truly defenseless. It turns out that humans are naturally chronotypes, meaning some of us are biologically programmed to be night owls, while others are morning larks. In a modern office, this is a nuisance. In the Pleistocene, it was life insurance. By having a group with a wide variety of ages and natural rhythms, the tribe created a 24-hour surveillance network without anyone ever having to pull a double shift. The grandmothers might go to bed early and wake up at 3 a.m., while the young hunters might stay up until midnight, and the nursing mothers might be up and down all through the dark hours. Because of this natural stagger, the threat window, the time when the entire group was vulnerable, was almost zero. This means that when you struggle with insomnia at 2 a.m. today, you aren't broken. You are likely just a sentinel whose brain is looking for a tribe that isn't there. But if your brain is designed to listen for danger, how can it ever relax enough to let you dream? The truth is that your brain has a secret standby mode that it uses whenever it feels the group is too small or the environment is too new. This is what scientists call the first night effect, a phenomenon recently decoded by researchers at Brown University. They found that when humans sleep in a new or unfamiliar place, the two halves of our brain don't sleep equally. The right hemisphere falls into a deep, restorative sleep, but the left hemisphere stays in a state of vigilant readiness. It remains more sensitive to external sounds and is ready to hit the biological alarm bell the second it hears something out of place. This is a direct inheritance from our ancestors who had to survive in shifting environments. They knew that a single night of being too asleep could be their last. Even when we are with our families today, if we are in a hotel or a new house, our brain treats us as if we are sleeping alone on the savannah. It refuses to give us the keys to full unconsciousness because it doesn't trust the walls to keep us safe. But if the brain is this paranoid, what happens to our physical bodies when we try to force them into isolation? This brings us to the second hidden danger of sleeping alone, the loss of the social thermostat. We often forget that humans are essentially tropical animals. We are hairless, thin-skinned, and notoriously bad at maintaining our core body temperature when the environment drops below a certain threshold. For an ancient human, the night wasn't just dangerous because of predators, it was dangerous because of the cold. Before the mastery of fire and the invention of high-tech synthetic blankets, social huddling was a physiological necessity. This isn't just a warm fuzzy sentiment, it's a measurable metabolic advantage. Studies on other primates, like Japanese macaques, show that individuals who huddle in groups during the night can reduce their energy expenditure by up to 30%. By sharing body heat, the group ensures that no single individual has to burn through their precious fat reserves just to keep their heart beating until dawn. When we sleep alone today, we are forcing our bodies to do the work of an entire tribe. We compensate with central heating and heavy blankets, but our nervous system still remembers the thermal stress of being a solo heater in a cold world. But if body heat was the only goal, why do we still feel the need for physical contact even in a warm room? The answer is found in the chemistry of your blood. When humans sleep in close proximity to one another, especially when there is skin-to-skin contact or the sound of synchronized breathing, our brains flooded with oxytocin. This is often called the cuddle hormone, but that name makes it sound optional. In reality, oxytocin is a powerful inhibitor of cortisol, the primary stress hormone. By sleeping together, ancient humans were essentially performing a nightly chemical reset. The presence of another human body tells your amygdala, the brain's fear center, that it can stand down. It signals that the defense budget of the body can be reallocated to things like tissue repair, immune function, and memory consolidation. When you sleep alone, your cortisol levels remain slightly higher, keeping you in a state of low-level microvigilance all night long. You might be asleep, but you aren't truly resting. You are idling like a car engine, wasting fuel because you are subconsciously waiting for a threat that never comes. But if we are biologically wired for this closeness, why does modern society demand that we sleep in separate boxes? This is where the history of sleep takes a sharp, jagged turn. For the vast majority of our history, the family bed, or the tribal longhouse, was the global standard. Even in the Middle Ages in Europe, it was perfectly normal for an entire family, and often several guests or servants, to share one massive bed. It wasn't considered a lack of privacy, it was considered the only way to be safe and warm. The shift toward sleeping alone only began during the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the Victorian era. It was a cultural movement driven by a new obsession with individualism and a growing, though scientifically flawed, fear of bad air, or miasma, that people believed was shared in close quarters. We traded our biological security for a cultural concept of privacy. We built bigger houses with more walls, and in doing so, we accidentally created an environment that is a sensory nightmare for our primal brains. We created the vacuum. But why is a quiet, empty room more terrifying to your brain than a noisy, crowded one? To understand that, you have to look at how our ears work during the different stages of sleep. Your brain doesn't actually turn off your hearing when you sleep, it just changes the filter. This is why a mother can sleep through a thunderstorm but wake up the instant her baby whimpers. We are evolved to listen for meaningful noise. In an ancient communal sleeping arrangement, there was a constant, low-level background of safety sounds. The crackle of the fire, the rhythmic breathing of your siblings, the occasional shift of a body nearby. These sounds were a constant confirmation that the group was alive and the sentinels were in place. In a modern bedroom, we have replaced those safety sounds with the silence of the void. To your evolutionary brain, total silence is a terrifying red flag. In nature, the only time a forest goes completely silent is when a top-tier predator is nearby and every other animal has frozen in fear. When you lie in your silent room today, your brain is interpreting that lack of noise as a warning. It keeps you in a lighter stage of sleep, scanning for the sound that will break the silence, because nothing is the most dangerous sound of all. But if our environment is the problem, is there any evidence that changing how we sleep could actually fix our modern health? The evidence is mounting, and it's coming from some of the most rigorous sleep labs in the world. Consider the work of Dr. Jerome Siegel at UCLA, who has spent decades studying the biology of the night. His research suggests that many of our modern sleep disorders, like insomnia and sleep apnea, are mismatched diseases. They are what happens when a biological system evolved for one environment is forced to operate in another. He found that in pre-industrial societies, people don't report insomnia as a condition. They might be awake in the night, but they don't feel the crushing anxiety that modern people feel when they can't sleep. Because they aren't alone. If an ancient human couldn't sleep, they would simply sit up, stoke the fire, and talk to whoever else was awake. Their wakefulness was a social opportunity, not a solitary failure. By isolating ourselves, we have turned a natural biological rhythm into a source of psychological torture. We have taken the watchman and locked him in a cell with no one to guard. But if the problem is this deep, is there a way to trick our brains into feeling the safety of the pack again? This leads us to the most counterintuitive wow fact of all, the rise of the weighted blanket and the white noise machine. We are currently spending billions of dollars trying to buy back the sensations we used to get for free. A weighted blanket is nothing more than a high-tech substitute for the physical pressure of another human body sleeping next to you. White noise is a digital ghost of the wind, the fire, and the rustle of the tribe. We are using technology to simulate the sensory cocoon that our ancestors lived in every single night. But even the best technology can't replicate the specific physiological sync that happens when two humans sleep in proximity. There is a documented phenomenon where the heart rates and breathing patterns of people sleeping together begin to entrain or synchronize. This biosyncing acts as a physical anchor, keeping both individuals grounded in a state of safety. It's a rhythmic reassurance that says, I am here and I am breathing, so you can keep breathing too. But if we are so dependent on this connection, what happens to the most vulnerable among us, our children, when we force them to sleep alone? The science of the crib is perhaps the most controversial and revealing part of this entire mystery. In many Western cultures, we have been told for decades that independent sleep is a milestone children need to reach as early as possible. But from an evolutionary perspective, putting an infant in a separate room to sleep alone is a radical, unprecedented experiment. Human infants are the most helpless primates on Earth. They cannot regulate their own temperature, they cannot defend themselves, and they cannot even move to escape a threat. For millions of years, an infant left alone at night was an infant that didn't survive until morning. This is why cry-it-out methods are so emotionally devastating for both the parent and the child. The infant isn't being difficult. They are experiencing a primal, existential terror. Their biology is telling them that they have been abandoned to the predators. Recent studies have shown that when infants sleep in close proximity to a caregiver, their breathing becomes more stable and their stress hormones drop significantly. We find that the separation we value so much in modern parenting might be creating a lifelong hypervigilance in our nervous systems. We are training our children's brains to always be on the lookout for a danger that we have culturally created. But if this communal sleep was so perfect, why didn't we just keep doing it? The transition wasn't an accident, it was a trade-off. As our societies became more complex, we began to value privacy and status over biological security. Having your own room became a symbol of wealth. Being able to sleep undisturbed became a mark of the elite. But evolution doesn't care about your social status or your floor plan. It only cares about survival. And evolution has determined that the safest way for a human to be unconscious is to be surrounded by other humans. We have reached a point where we are living in the safest era in human history, yet we are more anxious about our sleep than ever before. We have removed the physical threats, the lions, the cold, the raiders, but we have kept the threat response by removing the only thing that could turn it off, each other. We are like soldiers who have come home from a war but still can't sleep without a weapon under the pillow. Except our weapon was the breathing of our tribe, and we've traded it for a silent, locked room. But if we can't go back to living in caves and longhouses, where does that leave us? It leaves us with a big reveal that reframes everything you think you know about your own mind. The reveal is this: your insomnia isn't a glitch in your brain. It's a feature. The reason you can't sleep when you're stressed, the reason you wake up at every tiny creak of the floorboards, and the reason you feel a sense of dread in the middle of the night is that your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to save your life. It is looking for the rest of the pack. When it finds nothing but a silent, empty room, it assumes you are the last man standing. It assumes the rest of the tribe has been killed or has fled, leaving you behind as the final, desperate watchman. Your brain isn't broken, it is actually being hypercompetent. It is refusing to let you fall into a deep sleep because it knows that, in that state, you are just a large, motionless pile of calories. It is trying to keep you alive until the sun comes up and you can find your people again. We have built a world that is safe by our eyes, but deadly by our instincts. But if that's the case, how can we ever find true rest again? To find that rest, we have to acknowledge the ghost of the tribe that still lives in our nervous system. We have to realize that our modern sleep hygiene, the white walls, the blackout curtains, the solitude, might actually be the very thing keeping us awake. Some researchers are now suggesting that co-sleeping or communal rooms for families shouldn't be seen as a regression, but as a biological intervention. Others suggest that simply knowing why your brain is alert can reduce the anxiety that keeps the cycle of insomnia going. You aren't staring at the ceiling because you had too much caffeine. You are staring at the ceiling because your left hemisphere is on duty, and it's waiting for someone to take the next watch. We are a species that was never meant to face the dark alone. We survived the ice ages, the predators, and the thousands of years of terrifying uncertainty not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we were the best at watching over one another. We outsourced our safety to the group, and our brains haven't forgotten that deal. But if you're still not convinced, look back at your own nightly routine one more time. You stand there in the dark, checking that lock. You feel the cold metal of the bolt sliding into place. You think that this piece of steel is what stands between you and the dangers of the world. But as you walk back to your bed, notice how your heart rate doesn't actually drop. Notice how the silence of the house feels heavy, almost physical, pressing against your ears. Your ancient ancestors would look at your locked door and your private room and they wouldn't feel envious. They would feel pity. They would see a person who has been exiled. They would see a sleeper who has no one to hear their cry, no one to share their heat, and no one to watch the shadows while they dream. As you lie there tonight, waiting for the click of your brain finally giving up and letting you drift off, ask yourself, is the door locked to keep the world out, or is it locked to hide the fact that you are the only one left inside? The reality of our evolutionary history is a haunting closing argument against the way we live now. We have spent 10,000 years trying to build a world where we don't need anyone else to survive the night. We have succeeded in building the walls, but we haven't succeeded in convincing our brains to live within them. You are a sentinel without a post. You are a guardian without a gate. And that feeling of unease you have right now, that slight prickle on the back of your neck as you realize just how quiet your house has become, that is your biology trying to tell you the truth. It is the exact same feeling that a lonely human would have felt 50,000 years ago, standing on the edge of the firelight, looking into the trees. They knew what was waiting in the dark. And deep down, in the part of your brain that never sleeps, you know it too. You return to your bed. You fluff the pillow one last time. You pull the duvet up, feeling the weight of the fabric against your skin. You think about that lock on the door, the one you checked just minutes ago. It is a solid, modern, dependable piece of engineering. But as you close your eyes, you realize that the lock is only designed to stop a human. It was never meant to stop the crushing weight of 5 million years of evolutionary fear. The lock is a definitive, heavy closing argument for your safety, yet your brain is still listening. It is listening for the breathing that isn't there. It is listening for the crackle of a fire that went out centuries ago. And as you finally start to drift into a light, fragile sleep, the last thing you feel isn't the comfort of your room. It is the chilling, definitive realization that for the first time in the history of your bloodline, there is no one watching over you. You are completely, perfectly, and dangerously alone. If this deep dive into the hidden history of our nights has made you look at your own bedroom differently, perhaps it's time we start asking the right questions about our modern lives. Does the way we sleep explain why we feel so disconnected during the day? If you've ever felt that strange, midnight watchman anxiety, or if you have your own theories on why we've traded our tribal beds for private boxes, share your thoughts below. It's a conversation our species has been having around the fire for a long time. Maybe it's time we brought it back. Subscribe and join our pack for more journeys into the biological mysteries that make us human. After all, the night is long, and it's always better to face it together.